what we were going to do. But I just wanted to, I had a few more things I wanted to say. That's why I posted this will be the last class, because there's a certain amount of information I wanted to give over, which we basically just have a little bit more to touch on that I wanted to give over tonight. And then, of course, if anyone wants any of the back tapes, I could always send you a link. I have them all, but they're private, obviously. I don't want them publicly accessible, but if anybody wants, I could always send them. So Friday night is considered a very special night for relationships. The most special night is mikveh night, which I always thought was known, but the more I deal with people, the more I see it's not always known. Mikveh night is the most important night for relationships, so Friday night is considered a very special night because then it says the evil forces don't have ruling power. There's actually a prayer a man is supposed to say before relationships that the evil forces shouldn't have any part in this act. And Friday night, those forces don't rule, as we say, that there's no rulership in all the worlds for the evil forces for Klippa on a Friday night. And that's why it's the absolute best time for relationships. Obviously, in general, night is preferred. There's more time. You're not rushing. By day, we are active. By night, people slow down. The sages say we don't hear as well by day. There's too much noise. Sight overshadows our other senses, including sometimes our spiritual senses. So when you're in a darkened room, the sensuality of touch and hearing is much stronger, as our spiritual powers are much stronger. And of course, as we've discussed, we want to harness those spiritual powers and bring them into this act of relationship. It's interesting because the word for night in Hebrew is Laila. That's how you say in Hebrew, night. And Laila can be broken down to mean mine is hers. Laila could be comprised of two words, li, la. What's mine is hers. So this is really expressing what the night is supposed to accomplish. This full sensitivity to her, to the wife, to her needs. And that's what's supposed to be happening. The husband's supposed to be devoted to his wife. And we know also when a couple's in intimacy, they're supposed to be covered. It says otherwise they would be like the beasts of the field. We're made in God's image, so we have to respect that image. But at the same time, we say there's not supposed to be any clothing. The fronts of the body are supposed to be touching without any clothing as a barrier, so the two become one. So let's say if one time we want to remove all clothing so physically the two should be one, and then we want the covering over the two of us to retain that Selam Elokim, that image of God in us, and therefore, even at this time, there should be the concept of modesty. So we want no clothing and we want modesty to express that we're not losing our spiritual makeup through this physical act. It's a physical act, and we're retaining our spirituality as well at the same time. Just, you know, as we say, we get married and the husband says, Hareat mikudeshes li. Mikudeshes means sanctified. Mikudeshes really means separate. Behold, right now we're separate. We're separate from the rest of the world. It's just the two of us. And there's nothing that expresses that concept of it just being the two of us as much as physical intimacy, because that's only permissible between a husband and wife. And through that act, the husband and wife become one. Obviously, besides the physical aspect of intimacy, there's many other things we've touched on to how we're supposed to fuse and bond and connect with our husbands and become one. And I want to focus on a few just as like tools for ourselves to realize, to be these amazing wives, and also just want to highlight it as something I want to put out that it's something that's actually very good to teach your children as well. If you're in a position that you have them, or God willing, because there's so many things that we as adults have to unlearn and resync ourselves in a way that's not at all how we normally operate or how we've been trained to operate for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And it's like hard. And imagine if we gave our children the gift to be this way naturally. So they naturally could be amazing spouses because we train them in a way that they think naturally how we're trying to get ourselves to think. So I want to focus on a few things that both for ourselves are really tools to be the wife and ultimately the mother we're supposed to be, and also to have in mind, how can I help my child be like this? Because a lot of times these are messages the world doesn't give. The world actually gives opposite messages. And these are really things that help us be the spouse and the mother we're supposed to be. So what's a great thing that the world doesn't promote? Self-negation. Self-negation is a very important tool of being a good spouse. Now, if you think of your children, children have very strong wills. I want it, and I want it now. And I want it like this. And our culture, obviously, sorry, take this off. Our culture feeds into this. You know, the I mode is Western world, is for sure America in the Western world. We're all surrounded by very strong-willed people that are very forcefully getting their own way. Maybe when we were children, that's the model we were exposed to. So that's what we absorbed, is what successful people do, or strong people do, or how you get what you want do. And all that's horrific for a good marriage. So again, looking at yourself, if you know your instinct is, or you've been trained, you've been accultured, that you got to be strong, it's got to be my way, we want to shift to negation of self, to putting self aside for something bigger than yourself, which is your marriage. And we want to teach our children that quality of nullification, of putting themselves aside for someone else. I think we teach it best by modeling. So that's good because that forces us to do it. And as we're modeling, talking out loud, like, you know, even the conversation we had before with Miriam Sarah and the covering the hair. I think that's a great thing to tell your children. This is really hard for me. And I do it anyway, because that's what Hashem wants. I think that's very valuable information for a child to hear. You know, if a child would say to me, I don't want to daven, it's a student would say, I don't want to daven. Sometimes I'd say, you know what? I didn't want to daven today either. It was hard for me. I had so much to do. But I forced myself to daven. That's okay. We don't have to pretend we're these saints that always want to do it. There's a service of God that you don't want to do it, and you do it anyway, because they will definitely have plenty of things in their life that they don't want to do that Hashem wants. So it's good for them to know that the model is, it's normal to not want it sometimes. And we do it anyway. And that's how we serve Hashem. So in general, modeling, I didn't want to do this. I remember once I made this big deal about something. I don't think anyone appreciated it besides me. But whatever, it was a specific thing I wanted a certain way. My husband had mentioned he wanted a different way. I made a big deal. I came home. I said to the kids, oh, I got such a big gift for my husband Tati, for Tati today. And what? And I made it really dramatic. I can be, of course, very dramatic and say, you know, I don't think, like, in the end, I was like, oh. I was like, no, I really wanted this. I thought about this. I chose this. I shopped for this. But Tati wanted that. And I said, okay, I want to give Tati that gift. So I'm not getting how I want it. I'm getting how he wants it. So there's the personal work of, it is a true story. Meaning I really did want it a different way. And I really did put myself on the side of my husband. But it was okay. It wasn't such a big deal. Like, whatever. But there's negating myself. And then there's talking the whole thing out. So my children should absorb that as, that's how you're supposed to behave. Obviously, in their marriage, and honestly, obviously, in many other areas of their life as well. That's a really important tool. Something else really important for us to make our marriages the best and be very ideal to raise our children to live this way is positivity, shifting away from the negative perspective. In marriage and in all relations, how we see the other person and how we process their flaws critically impacts our satisfaction or dissatisfaction in the relationship. Happens all the time. Happens with your maid, with your colleagues, with your neighbors, with your mother-in-law. with your children, with your spouse. It happens all the time in our life. Everyone has flaws. It's really significant to how we process their flaws. And that makes a huge difference in, am I going to feel good in this marriage? Am I going to feel good in this relationship? Or am I going to be dissatisfied? Now imagine giving your children this gift of knowing how to process flaws. So by them, it's just natural. We have to work for it. Let's help them be natural. So there's a bunch of tools we can teach ourselves. And when we have them ourselves, we can also share them with our children. One idea that's very powerful is understanding that when I see flaws in someone else, it helps me to recognize the flaws in myself. We've touched on this, so we know this. But understanding this, that when I see a flaw, I mean, we know it in theory, but now live like it. When you see a flaw in someone else, understand it's God's plot to make you aware of a flaw in yourself. Because my self-love covers over all of my real acknowledgement of my weaknesses, but I have no blinders on the other person. So if I see a flaw in someone else, again, potentially, not always, but potentially it's helping me recognize things I need to work on. So instead of being bothered by their flaw, turn it around to like, how do I fix myself? Now, an important tool to teach yourself and then to teach your children is to ask this question: am I identifying or am I emoting? That's a very significant question. In other words, when you're bothered by someone else's flaws, you have to ask yourself, why is this bothering me? If I'm just aware dispassionately, I'm being informed to help correct. If I'm passionately upset by it, it's because it's my issue as well. So whenever you're bothered by a flaw in your brain, should ding the sentence: am I identifying or am I emoting? If I'm identifying, I know about it to help someone. And how can I help this other person? If I'm emoting, it's my flaw. And that's why it's getting me in my guts. When you live this way, because you probably will see flaws in your husband, right away, it's like, well, if I'm identifying it, it's not mine, and I can help him because that's why God's showing it to me. And if I'm emoting it, guess what? It's mine. And that's why God's showing it to me, so I should change myself. And before I can help him, I have to help myself. And then when you understand that and really can live it, you can share that with your children. Wait, are you identifying this, or is it getting you all emotionally upset? Why are you emotionally upset about somebody else's problem? It's not your problem. Why are you so emotional about it? Because it is your problem. That's why it's bothering you so much. And then maybe you could help them see it in themselves and fix it and learn that this is how we look at other people's flaws. In other words, when you realize that this is really my flaw, which is why I'm emoting it, then instead of focusing on the other person, instead of being upset by the other person's behaviors, it's you searching yourself and you find it in yourself. And of course, you probably will find it in a more refined dose, perhaps, and that could be why you didn't realize it. And then you work through it. So this is self-growth. And when I'm in this self-growth mode, I'm not emotionally upset at the other person. I'm focused on the work I need to do. And it actually helps the other person shift as well. It for sure helps them shift because, especially in a situation like a spouse, when they see, let's say they always, get all angry. And when you're saying they're angry and it gets you so upset, you realize, hey, I also sometimes get angry and lose it. And as you're working and talking out loud, how you're working on your anger and working, not talking about them, talking about yourself. You're working on your anger, you're working on your self-control, you're working on diffusing it, you're working on deep breathing and counting and pulling out the candles and all those tips. You're giving them the sense of, hey, you don't have to say a word about them. Assuming they're a normal person, they're like, hey, I have that issue also. I didn't know I could control it. I didn't know you could change. Look how my wife is changing. Wow. Look how she's free now. Wow. I'd like to do that too. Also, obviously, there's spiritual levels of how your work is helping the other person, but also in a very physical way. When a spouse is changing, it makes the other spouse feel change is possible. I can also change. And even if they don't change, once it's no longer your problem, you're not going to be bothered by it anymore. You'll still know it's there, but you won't be bothered by it anymore. You can identify it, but not emote it if it's not yours. So these are things to understand ourselves and to teach our children. Am I noting or emoting? The self-growth, understanding that my change helps the other change as well. My emoting issue is going to stop if I work on myself, and my work helps him do his work, physically and also spiritually. Another thing that we need to do when we see flaws in our husband and anyone else in the world, and we've discussed this, is can I challenge myself to reframe this quality as something positive? Can I challenge myself? Can I stretch my imagination? Can I stretch my vision? Can I get out of my upset box to reframe this as a plus? Imagine teaching your children. When you see a flaw in someone else, look for the positive. What's the positive? Well, there is no positive, it's a flaw. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Sometimes things that look like a flaw, later you realize they're an advantage. Oh, he's so unfeeling. Maybe because of that, he's cooler in a crisis than you. You know, no drive. Maybe he's relaxed when you're tense. You know, all these things could be flaws, but could also, in different situations, actually be something very positive. So we really want to challenge ourselves. We want to train ourselves when we get frustrated with our husbands or anyone else in our life. Besides the first issue I said, is it my flaw and that's why it's bothering me? Is this really a flaw? Or is it something that perhaps in some situations is actually very beneficial for me? It's actually a good quality, you know? And a lot of times things are, not every time, but a lot of times in normal healthy people have flaws. Very often in normal healthy people, their flaws in certain situations are actually very good. And other situations are not. But when you're in that other situation that it's not, and you remind yourself, but wait, this was very beneficial for me in this area. Oh, you know, he wants me to make all the decisions. Well, sometimes you really like it that he wants you to make all the decisions. You get your way, things that are important to you. So, you know, now you're bothered by it. Yesterday, it was a great quality of his. So just sometimes you have to put things in perspective and recognize that, like, at this moment, this isn't helping me. I'm annoyed by it. But yesterday it was, or perhaps tomorrow it will be. Understand God's very specific. So those are two really important qualities in a marriage: negation of self and a positive I. That's really important for you. And I'm saying it's really important for your sons and your daughters to try to help them assimilate these as virtues. Assimilate these as ways we're supposed to live, because it will make their life so much easier. They'll be so ahead of the game. Your son-in-laws and daughter-in-laws will be very grateful to you. I always said my daughter-in-law should be very grateful to me because I trained my sons to be good workers. I know they're supposed to help clean and do all the good domesticated things. And it makes it easier. So when you help your children be good spouses when they're still 5 and 10 and 15, they're just ahead of the game. They don't have to unlearn all the stuff the rest of us have to unlearn. Now, obviously, there are some things that are just woman specific. There's some things you're going to work on, and maybe you'd graciously pass on to your daughters, not your sons. But these ideas of self-negation and positivity applies to men and women, absolutely. Any questions or thoughts on any of this before I move on? Okay, so there's something else that we have spoken a lot about, that obviously we want to train ourselves in. Not only when we're married, we'd like to train ourselves in before we're married, to be ahead of the game when we are married and not have to shift then, and like beyond all the other awkward new stuff you have to learn in being married, that as well. Let's just get under our belt before. And if you have daughters, you'd love to train them like this from when they're 5 years old. It'll only be more natural for them. Which is, of course, the idea that we've emphasized many, many times over this course, which is being a makabel. Being the makabel that draws out your husband, that draws out from him his depths, his ability to give. He can give more naturally when I'm in the makabel mode. We help him be the mashpia. When he's giving love, when he's giving praise. This is coming because we're helping him access his potential to give. The degree he otherwise wouldn't access it. If not that we're eliciting it from him, because we're treating him as mashpia. So we're lifting him up into that role. So now he's in that role, and now he's giving me the things that I need from him and want from him, and that help me. So I know we've spoken about that many, many times, because it's a foundational understanding as Torah views it as the dynamics of marriage. And this also applies to our daughters. Because honestly, as our culture emphasizes the opposite. Very rare in our culture, across the board, secular, religious, all the schools I know of, they don't promote, wow, she's such a makabel. It's not like the compliments you hear. It's not like the way of the world. And, it's good to think, especially of girls, is she more naturally a makabel? Is she more naturally a mashpia? And how do I respond to her when she's a makabel? And how do I respond to her when she's a mashpia? What strengths am I encouraging in her? How can I help her cultivate her feminine makabel nature? She's a woman in potential in 10 years and 20 years. So she has this feminine makabel nature, but it's being a little bit squashed living in America in the 21st century. What opportunities does she have to be a makabel? So for a child, the most natural opportunities would obviously be in her relationship to her parents and her relationship to her teachers. To really view them as mashpiyim, as those that are giving her, that she should be makabel what they're giving, not just viewing teachers as teachers of knowledge, but as someone that's giving you influence that you're proactively, not passively, you're proactively receiving. So that's like a great opportunity to help her realize she's supposed to be makabel. I actually had this with my son. One of my sons, he was learning in France. And he's a very mashpiyat style person. Out there, dynamic, charismatic, take charge. And he got them really nervous. And they didn't like it at all. And there was friction. Good boy, frum boy, smart boy, Hasidic boy. But they just did not like that personality. And I remember speaking to him, and I told him exactly this point. I said, look, Hashem wants you to develop this part of yourself, the part that's the makabel. Part, I don't know if I use a makabel for him, maybe I said bittul, maybe I said kabbalas oath. Hashem wants you to develop it. So I said, if you were in another school, if you were in my school, they would just love you for all your great gifts and talents and drive. But guess what? This school doesn't like how you behave. And maybe Hashem is specifically putting you in a situation that doesn't like how you behave. So you're going to learn and you're going to change. And you're going to develop that part of yourself that you otherwise would never have to develop. And it'll be so much better for the rest of your life. And I really felt that. Sometimes, especially with children, we see that they're so strong-willed. They always want to be the mashpia. There's no room for anyone else. Some of our kids think they're smarter than everyone else, for sure, than their parents. Know everything. Always are right. And it's really important to teach children to be a makabel, not just with their spouse, in all relationships. Sometimes you could see this with a child and her friends if she's very overbearing in her relationships with her friends. And you could look for opportunities to explain to her that your friends don't like it when you always take charge. You need to create room for other people. You need to allow other people's opinions heard. You need to respect and accept their opinions and plans instead of your own vision. Don't worry that you're making your child weak. And again, in our culture, we're worried that the kids that are makablos are weak. She's not changing her personality. You're just broadening her. You're giving her balance. Something else to ask yourself is, how often does my child, if you're trying to help your children with this, how often does my child see me in the makabel role? where can I model feminine Makabel energies? Because a lot of times we're very much in a mashpia role, especially with our children. So how can I show her that I'm a Makabel? How do I teach her to be self-aware of this process? Talking to her about woman as a Makabel, this is our strength, applying it with her teachers, how this brings Mashiach, how we can receive whatever Hashem wants to give us, how we can view this as good. All of these things are really discussions, because the world gives us the other message. This is not the message probably any of you received growing up. It's not the message you probably received if you're growing up in an Orthodox home, if you're growing up in an Orthodox school. Like, nobody gives you this message, and then suddenly, boom, you're married. And now you're supposed to shift and get into this Makabel space. But nothing else in your life prepared you for it. Because in all of our other experiences, we're like promoted for being the mashpia. And now in marriage, we have to shift and we have to become the Makabel. And that's, for some of us, a big paradigm shift. And I'm saying this both in terms of how you can educate your daughters so it should be natural for them to slip into that role, be in that role, be a better team player, be a better friend, be a better student, be a better child, and for yourself as well. Especially if you're not yet married, to really say, this is a great opportunity. Maybe God is waiting for me to get some of these tools under my belt so that then when I'm married, it's going to be right. So when I look at myself, where are my opportunities now when I'm not yet married for the positivity, for the self-negation, and for being a Makabel from other people? There are plenty of opportunities. Where are those opportunities? And let me specifically appreciate them that way. Be just like when I have an opportunity to do a favor for my husband, I'm not saying always, when I'm focused, I appreciate it because I want to do him favors. I want to give him those gifts. And sometimes I'll be I'm doing this for you because I want to give you a favor. You know, like I really don't want to do this at all. I really have other things I'm supposed to be doing at this moment. But I want to give you a gift. So I'm doing something now to give you a gift. That's great. You could say, I say it. You could say it. It's great for him to be aware that it's a gift. And it makes you very focused and very conscious. Yes, I want this opportunity. I'm not resentful of this opportunity. I appreciate this opportunity because I want to give him gifts. It's good to give your husbands gifts. I'm happy to be able to give him a gift. So similarly in your life now, if you think about your life now and think, where do I have Makabel opportunities? Not, of course, the same degree as when I'm married, but what can I simulate now that will help me develop those skills naturally? Not wait, it's like, oh, when I engage, that's when I'm going to lose the 20 pounds. Or, oh, when this happens, that's when I'm going to do that. No, you do it now beforehand. Anything you know about yourself, anything you want to change, don't say, when I'm married, I'm going to change. Now is the time to change. And just think, maybe that's what God's waiting for. Maybe he's waiting for me to change so I won't have difficulties in my relationship. Maybe he's waiting for me to really develop this Makabel ability so I'll be the wife and the mother that he'd want me to be. Any thoughts on any of this? Any questions, any feelings?
Yeah, this is awesome. This really is the tikkun. I have been trying this out since we've been learning together, and I think I mentioned before, it just, for me as a woman, it just feels so regal, like so royal. There's a sensitivity there to go out into the world, which is very humble. Like, I'm a Makabel. I mean, it's like totally different. Like every single interaction is completely different because it's like you're saying, we have, is it like men, I guess, have been known to like categorize things, but for me as a woman, I definitely lean a little bit more logical. So they have like these categories, like Hashem is the mashpia. Eventually, when I meet my husband, he's going to be a mashpia. So like, okay, they have their roles. I need to work on my role, and like, however I can make my role better in relation to Hashem being a makabel, you know, maybe that's going to open up a pipe for my parnasa or for my davening. And, you know, or maybe when I'm approaching my davening now, it is more from like the princess point of view. Like, I'm asking Hashem, please, you know, it's not, it's like, you've like erased like a lot of like male kind of energy, like you're saying, the world feeds it, women can do anything, women are the breadwinners, women are this, and it's like, wait a minute, we're, you know, we are more,
We're supposed to be women.
We're in. we can be out, but like we need to get we need to get like super feminine, and that's just such a beautiful message. I love it.
Good. I'm so happy, because you're right. The world is definitely, the world wants us to think, I mean, that's the feminist movement in essence, wants us to believe that we're men with slightly different bodies. And if we could only get our bodies to look just like men's, we'd be in such better shape. If we could only be as strong as men, only get the same equal pay as men, like, you know, then we'd be actualized. And that's such a derogatory message for a woman. We're not men with different bodies. We're women. And the world's not encouraging us in that. The world's not promoting it. The world's not, you know, not saying, wow, look at this woman. She's such a wonderful makabel. Nobody ever says that. But that's where we're supposed to be. That's us in our best space, in our regal space, in our noble space, in our best space. You know, and a lot of different roads to it. I have a friend who's very religious, and she wanted to take this course, very expensive course, on like all these different, like, you know, like beauty, you know, going up to the next level in beauty and makeup and hair and clothing and all these things. And her husband's like, and it's a very expensive course. I was like, why do you have to spend so much money on it? Like, can't you just get all this from YouTube videos? And she was like, no, I really can't. She's the, you know, if I really, really want to get there, I really need to spend the money and really be immersed and really be taught and really take the course. And just very briefly, I was speaking with her today on WhatsApp, and she was, you know, she said it's just, she feels so malchus, so feminine and so regal and so noble, you know, and it's like, wow, that sounds like such a weird road to go. No, it's really affirming her feminine identity. And that's something we really want to hold very tight to our hearts, that this is my road. And this is my road to be the best wife, to therefore create for us the best marriage, and therefore give my children this priceless gift of a solid marriage. Kids know. They know when it's solid. They know when it's shaky. And the more solid it is, the more solid they are. So there's so many reasons why you want to help yourself be that wife that's going to help build the relationship. As we've said many times, yes, we're the ones that invest. We're the ones that do a lot of the work. We're the ones that have the sensitivity of what needs to go into it and how important it is. But it's transformative. And it's something that we really have to fight and put aside a lot of the messages we've absorbed throughout our life of what it means success. You know, that vision of success, which is very mashpia oriented, instead of that vision of success as that very, very feminine, wise makabel. So thank you for that. And any other questions or thoughts on any of this?
I was also just going to add that it did very much resonate with me too, that piece about maybe that is the thing that you need to be working on right now. And I think that, for me, I know, just even the profession I'm in, and like you said, society, and also just being single for so long, you feel like you have to have that super, strength to like just, navigate life, and you have to be super independent. And it actually gets harder and harder and harder to do that, because that's being vulnerable, and that's not easy to do, especially if you keep trying in relationships and they don't work. So it actually, you just build up this like wall, really. And I think that recognizing that isn't our role in a relationship. It's not our role to be that strong, independent person. It's our role to receive. And being able to do that takes practice. So you can't just think you're going to be able to do it in a second. So you have to start, taking down that wall beforehand.
Absolutely.
I agree 100%.
I think, did we speak about this last week? No, it wasn't in this class. I think it was in the shidduch class. I don't think it was in this class. But I think I touched on that. I did exactly what you're saying, Raphael, in that class, how there's a concept in theory of, it's much easier to get married when you're younger, which is true. And exactly for the reasons you just said. You just like pinned all of them. And so the question is, okay, but that's not how God made it work. Like, hey, I was willing. This was his choice. And then true. But it's really important then to recognize that and to say exactly as you said. It could be our profession. It could be, what was the class I remember the discussion last week? It could be our profession. It could be survival tools, independence, strength, developing your thick skins. I mean, yes, I got married young, but I've learned it through many other things in life, Life has a way of teaching you that be strong. And then, but wait, and that's fine, and that's good. And I believe in being strong. But in my marriage, I have to allow myself to be vulnerable. I have to find that place that's vulnerable. I have to find that space that's needy of my husband. Because we are. And a marriage where a woman isn't able to recognize that she's needy and that he's feeling a need of hers, it's not a marriage, because you're not willing to truly surrender. You're really not. There's a piece you're holding back, because you got to be strong. You got to be tough. You've got to be independent. You got to be able to handle for yourself. All of which you do have to be. But you have to be able to say, but not here. Not in this arena. In this arena, I need to be vulnerable and needy in a positive way, not needy in a negative way. Nobody's looking for someone to be like, oh, you're home, good, now I can dump on you everything. I was waiting for you to walk through the door so I can complain about my whole day. No, that's not like a good marriage tip. But in an emotional way, that the husband's fed by your turning to him that way, which is sometimes really hard for us. And it's really great to find tools to practice it beforehand. So there's enough hard changes in being married. First time, second time, it's still a tremendous shift in being married. And especially if you've been independent, especially if you've been independent for a long time, it's a really huge shift to be married. And to be needy and to be willing to compromise, and be willing to change, and be willing to say, his way of doing it's not my way, but I can do it his way. There's nothing wrong with doing it his way, just because I've been doing it my way for a long time. It's fine to do it his way. It's fine. But I think my way's better. Guess what? Your way might be better, and it's still fine to do it his way. Unless it's something very important, it's still fine to do it his way. And just, all the little details. Sometimes little details. I always make a big deal of giving my husband gifts. I'm very into that. I like putting all these like C's and everything on my challah. My husband doesn't like it at all. I'm giving you a gift. I left it plain, save myself a few minutes of work. I like opening the challah, putting in like cinnamon and all these delicious things. He can't stand it. Everyone loves it, but he doesn't like it. Okay, I gave you a gift. I'm doing it plain. It's just little details of like, my way's better. Who cares? The marriage is more important than that. Giving him gifts and building him up and showing him you're more important to me than these things is helping your husband be the mashpia you need. It's like every time you build him or your child, the same thing. Every time you can build your child, you're giving yourself a gift of a stronger, healthier child. Every time you build your husband, you're giving yourself your gift of a better husband. Who's going to be better for who? For you. And it's like so hard when you see people that just don't get that. Like, you're helping yourself. You're not hurting yourself. You're helping yourself. Because you're making him someone who now naturally is going to look to you as someone he wants to give to. And that's the spiral. It's not a cycle. It's a spiraling higher and higher dynamics in a marriage. And it's great. I'm so happy that, I'm sorry, you found examples now, you're saying in all relationships, to work on this. Because it is true, we can always do this in all relationships. And very often I advise someone who has a big problem with this, single. If you're married, working with your husband. When you're single, do it in every single relationship. You can find it. There's always space to find, to say, even that self-negation piece. Listen to the other person, hear them, put yourself on the side, and support what they want. It's really hard for some people. And then those people get married. It's so hard. So learn before you get married. Why should your husband be the guinea pig? Why should your marriage be the guinea pig? Improve yourself beforehand, so when you're married, you already know how to do this. You master the skill, which is what I was trying to say about with your children. Because so often, even if women work on it in their marriage, they don't think to like pass it on, that their children should have these skills. But why should your daughters or sons have to like relearn when they get married and shift? Like give them the advantage now. That for them it's natural. For us it's not so natural. These are, it's already Mashiach times. Let them be Mashiach children. Let being a good spouse be just natural. So thank you. Thank you for that. So I guess we'll stop at this point. And this will be the last class of this series. If at any point you want any of the videos, or you have a friend that you think would benefit, they just send me a WhatsApp and I could just send, I'll do it one at a time, because I've learned if I send a lot, people that are well, they don't listen anyway. Send you one, you'll watch it, then tell me, and then I'll just keep sending if at any point you want to review it, or you have a friend that you think it'll be helpful for. Thank you so much for making this possible. And I'm really, really glad that we did it. And I'm really glad that we have a Kala in our midst. And
Awesome.
Mirza Shem, everyone here should be Kalas in our midst.
Amen.
That, we should, sometimes it really is a sense of like, Hashem, what are you waiting for from me? Because you run the world. There must be something you're waiting for. Now, I know I deal with some girls and I feel like, a girl I know very well, and she's, 35, and like, what is Hashem waiting for? I said, maybe it's him. Maybe he still needs to do some work. Maybe to take on a haklata to help him do his work, so he'll be ready, so it can happen already. But, as long as you have the time, just either take on a haklata for him or do your own work, and know that exactly at the right time, which should be very, very, very soon, you should find a person and should have the same bracha Leah has of clarity. Clarity doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but clarity means, this is the right one, this is the one, this you're walking exactly the road that you're supposed to be walking. And then you should all have that bracha, and it should happen very soon.
Amen. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for
the
joining. Look forward to
Very
hearing
wonderful.
more Kalas. That was so nice, right?
Yeah, thank you. I felt like this
Amazing.
helped me
So-
part of the journey.
Very happy to do that.